Welcome back to Buying Sandlot. Today we talk about GameChanger's new partnership with GoPro, and we have LeagueApps CEO Brian Litvack on to discuss the new solutions his team is building over there and talking about a new one that they'll be releasing in the next week. But before we get into that, tickets for our Buying Sandlot Summit in Philadelphia on April 14th and 15th are still available. Get those over at buyingsandlot.com or the link in this show's description. Well, executives from Huddle, GameChanger, Perfect Game, all speaking, and panels around text-heavy hitters, streaming, data facilities, and consolidation. Not to mention networking, all in the state-of-the-art Switch House and Ballers. You won't want to miss this. Check out the newsletters. We'll be announcing more updates as we get closer to the event. And actually, we'll bring you a couple announcements that we had today in the newsletter. Sponsorship announcements, new speaker announcements. Kyle, do you want to take over the sponsorship announcements we just had?
Yeah, I'll take it away. So this one's been a long time in the making, but obviously you put on an event like this and you need to get some level of corporate support, right? I am proud of the fact that we've had some people kind of assume this was the case, and it's not. It's not a pay-to-play event. Lots of industry events, not just in youth sports, but other areas. You kind of, hey, you got to like pay your tribute fee to get up on stage, and we've always led the coverage of Buying Sandlot as a media-first organization. You know, content is separate from. We got to be in business. We got to have sponsors and partnerships and things like that. But we treat content the way any media outlet would. And I very much view what's on stage as part of our content. So while we certainly have plenty of sponsors who can and should and are speaking, this isn't a pay to play event. So I'm first and foremost proud of that, but also excited to announce that, we saw some of the biggest players in the space as sponsors, whether that's GameChanger sponsoring our evening networking event at Ballers. They are their exclusive sponsor of that event. We've talked about it a lot on here. That will take place right after the first day of the summit. It's right next door. We're going to leave one building, walk over to the other. We're going to have hors d'oeuvres, 2-hour open bar, I believe, dinner served down on the turf, and then upstairs will open up like 6:37. We'll go up. We'll have a pickleball tournament. There are padel courts. If you've never played, it's a lot of fun. These super high-end golf simulators, I think with like the undulating turf, that sort of thing. There's squash courts. You've been there. We've talked about it. GameChanger, extra innings presented by GameChanger. We're happy to have them on board and appreciate their sponsorship there. But it's not just them. We got the networking room is the LeagueApps Lounge. We got TeamSnap, which you'll be living on the TeamSnap or TeamSnap One live stream stage. Interviewing people. This is
news to me. Thank you, TeamSnap. I appreciate you guys.
So you'll be in front of the TeamSnap backdrop, step and repeat on the live stream stage, interviewing anybody who wants to kind of come over and chop it up with you while and me. I'll be there a little bit too. And then we got Fast Break, Event Connect, Morgan Lewis, Stout. The investment bank is sponsoring the VIP lounge, I believe. We have Playbook 365, Anchor, Top of Court, Auto, Play On, and some others coming in just as we speak almost. So we're not done, but we appreciate everyone's support. And just in case you were questioning as to the types of businesses and people involved in the event, hopefully the sponsor list sort of puts those to bed. And then we got great speakers today. I won't go too far in depth, but the CEO of Pixelot, Doron Gerstel, Sandy Ogg, who we've talked about a bunch from Curve Sports, the Weatherford-backed Baseball Super Club network they're building, Chris Chiaccio, hope I'm pronouncing that right, Chief Commercial Officer at IMG Academy, Nick Carroll, the co-founder of Prep Network. He's going to be on a paddle alongside, I believe, Rob Podger from Perfect Game, talk about content and content and tournaments and how those two things go together. Two of the leaders in that space. Kate Quattlebaum from Sports Engine is going to talk about athlete safety alongside our friends at Go4. John Erlinson, Youth Athletes United. Vince Rusomagno Sr., podcast guest, owner of All-Star Baseball Academies here in the Philly area, who's looking to expand. Ellis Mayer, Chief Clinical Officer at Go4. Dan Scheiman, President Priority Partnerships. And we have more really good ones to announce later this week or Monday. So if you haven't gotten your tickets yet, I don't know what you're waiting for.
Something for everybody.
Something for everybody. Get your tickets at buyingsandlot.com.
Yeah, thank you to sponsors. Thank you to speakers. Thank you to everybody who helped power the show and allow us to continue to show up in your inboxes and your podcast feeds. All right, let's get into it. GameChanger, GoPro, they partner on an exclusive streaming bundle retailing at Dick's Sporting Goods for a little under $500. On Samir's episode, you did. He said they'd remain camera agnostic after signing a partnership with Pixelot. Obviously, that comes down the pike with GoPro right now. We talk a lot about SaaS. We don't talk a lot about CaaS, camera as a service. That seems to be becoming more of a revenue generator for youth sports. I've heard rumors TeamSnap is looking for a camera operator. They also obviously have the RTMPs connecting that they do, as well as a lot of the other live streamers. IMG, I believe, is going to announce a camera partner down the line. From my interview with Mike Milliron, the COO over there, Black Bear, sponsor of the newsletter, they partner a lot with Spadeo. Huddle has their own hardware. CaaS is kind of driving this reoccurring revenues from monthly subs, bundles, recruiting, analytics into the ecosystem. What's your take on another partnership for GameChanger and just camera tech as a revenue generator as a whole?
Love CaaS. Did you come up with that, or did you read that somewhere? I haven't heard that.
You know, this what sucks about me having just the utmost integrity. I wish I could take it, but I think somebody, and I forget, I don't want to give the wrong one. I think Pixelot might call themselves CaaS, camera as a service. So
as you were explaining it, I was going to say Duran, who's coming to the event we announced today, is literally the perfect person to speak about this, because I think Pixelot very much views himself as kind of like that B2B2C to B2B to B2C is the wrong phrase here, but they want to partner with the platforms, multi-platforms, rather than be kind of the consumer-facing brand, I think. And they're probably, the best position to talk about this, and they certainly will at our amazing streaming panel, by the way. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Everyone's got a different take on how to do this. When I had Reed on from TeamSnap, he's like, hey, right now, we're just leaning on kind of the phone. Every parent's got a pretty good camera in their hands, and there's a lot of damage we could do with that. GameChanger, I think, historically has thought about it the same way, and they still do, from talking to Samir. Like, that's the only way you get scale is by using people's iPhones and, to a lesser extent, Androids, for all my Apple fanboys out there. But that being said, it's like, okay, all these other cameras exist. They make sense. It's just about wiring and connecting them and maybe providing some incentive. And so the software and connections play nice. So I think it makes a ton of sense. I wouldn't be surprised if you see more of this. You got better cameras on the market. Let's just find ways to pair them. So also, it's not lost on me that we're leading today in our newsletter with GameChanger, even though they're our presenting sponsor of the evening event. That actually wasn't, as I say, it's not pay to play. That actually wasn't planned out. It just sort of worked out that way.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. But no, I mean, I don't know how much of the video or I know you've been head down like on the on the event front, so I don't know how much you were able to watch like the GameChanger GoPro announcement, but the stuff, it looks slick. I know people have complained, about their submodel kind of increasing a little bit and stuff. But when you look at how good the 1080p is, now you got the integration of, the bundles with obviously GoPro and everything. Like, at least these companies are giving back in terms of like increasing technology value, increasing customer value and stuff. And I think one thing that I really enjoy if I was a parent is that sometimes when you're putting your phone in the chain link fence, you'll get the chain link in it, but you got the GoPro now that is a perfect size for a chain in a chain link fence.
That's a super important one that probably goes like underlooked in terms of how these things operate. But the other one I think is just as straightforward. It's the last bullet point in the release: is freeze your phone from behind the backstop. Right? We've covered these like so many. Was it Veo? One of them released basically a stick in a box that you put two phones in, and then you can kind of get like this full view of the field, but it requires 2 or 3 phones. So instead of having to buy their camera, you just buy the box and slide your phone in. And my first thought was like, okay, but I want my phone.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's
what
phone.
That's what Xbox Go, their first one, I forget what it was called, but that was, you had to put your phone on it and it moved it around. And now they're like, you know what? People want their phone. Here's a 4K camera. It's just going to follow the action the entire time. We want our phone. Okay. We talk about a lot of this, how bad screen time is, but you know what? We're conditioned.
And I like what Hannah Howard and Rematch are doing, where it's kind of like these automated highlights where it's just constantly, it's like a running DVR. It's just constantly flushing everything but the last. It's like the black box on a plane. Maybe there's a bad example, but you know what? It only records the last 30 minutes, right? Like when there's an accident, it's like, well, it got the last 30 minutes or whatever happened up there. It's recording the last 30 seconds always. And then if there's a goal, you just hit the button and it auto clips it. I think it's a great feature. I think it's a great company they're building. But my first thought was like, okay, but that doesn't that doesn't solve the problem of me wanting my phone for other things. Storage is a concern, and loading the camera roll is definitely a piece of that. So I'm glad they're addressing it. But I always want, I was always like, okay, but I still kind of I may want to do other things on my phone. If my kid's not in, I may need to check an email or something like that. So like, I like that there's some interoperability here with consumer cameras like GoPro. I mean, the average person doesn't know what Pixelot is, right? So you got to wire the fields. I'm learning this at our local recreation league, which is backed by the municipality. Like, to go install something like Pixelot requires like all sorts of permits and approvals, even if it makes sense to everybody, right? A GoPro is a little easier because it's portable and it's not your phone. So it represents a good middle ground. I think we'll see lots more of these things, especially on outdoor fields and the long tail of sports where you can't just mount a camera in an ice rink, right? It's outside, different seasons, different sports going on different fields. The flexibility of those feels like a no-brainer.
Yeah, if you're hearing this for the first time, I did just want to give you a little bit more capabilities. It's the GoPro Hero 13 black camera. It comes with a GameChanger streaming kit. This is the bundle I'm talking about. USB pass-through door, 64 gigabyte SD card, protective case. And if you are a GameChanger customer and you're like, hey, how do I get this? It integrates with the GameChanger platform via the GoPro Quick app. Kyle, you did talk about interoperability, and I actually had this as a question I want to ask you. Does this get us closer to platform interoperability? Everybody's partnering with everybody. Why not? Let the people talk to each other.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone's happy to partner with a GoPro, because GoPro isn't sitting on a mountain of 80 million or 80,000 sports registrations, right? So it's easy to, and this isn't specific to anybody, but it's easy to partner with someone outside the ecosystem and bring them in. I think Brian talked a little bit about this, like open their APIs to Sign Up Genius, right? Or as an example he gave, places like that. But like, there's a difference between Sign Up Genius and GoPro and then somebody who's also in youth sports, right? So I do think the platforms are welcoming to anything that can serve youth sports, but isn't directly, maybe a competitor, versus like, that competitor interoperability is, that's the big question mark, I think. Because they're kind of the guy behind the guy. They're sitting on the data. That's the stuff that really will be interesting if and when it opens up.
We're still waiting on the beer summit, and it might have to be April 14th, April 15th. But moving on to the flip side.
What's the beer summit?
The beer summit, I think Obama had it with the G20 back in the day.
Oh, yeah. The beer, yeah.
So
we'll bring them all together at the bar. Yes. It will bring them together in the LeagueApps lounge at the bar. Right. Yes. And this will be a real kumbaya event. And we'll just say, hey guys, let's put let's write our APIs on a napkin and then just share them. Right. That's how we'll solve the
broker.
You gotta get that. You gotta get that.
No, I'll cut that out. All right, make a note. Cut that out.
You know what? Just bleep the name. Just bleep the name, and I think he can leave the rest.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right. On the flip side of this, and this comes, we wrote about this in the newsletter. There will obviously be privacy and data challenges for companies when you're recording kids, when you have athlete data for minors and stuff. PlayOn just got fined $1.1 million by the California Privacy Protection Agency Board, not because of a camera issue, but GameChanger, I'm thinking about like streams over 9 million games a year. Huddle has millions of hours of basketball and football games. We've got AI tracking. It's only going to get better. It's only going to be more integrated into these systems. You got data being shared across multiple platforms, kids' games being archived. Unfortunately, it does feel like it'll be when, not if, these companies all run into kind of a privacy violation down the line. What do I know they're going to be kind of towing the line here on privacy as states by states and laws, change, and it's a fragmented industry.
Talk to John, CEO of FastBreak, back in the fall. Maybe a good spot to put his clip talking about this specific issue.
I think that there's 16 sets of privacy laws around the country. It started with the CCPA, the California Child Protection Act, and now there's 15 other states who have emulated laws about that. And I think sharing data outside our data policy and protections and, all the compliance that we've invested heavily into doing is a risk that I'm not willing to take on.
So, yeah, I mean, a couple of things here. So this specific one feels like an California $1.1 million isn't a wrist slap, but it feels like an Oso, California thing, right? I learned a few years ago that basically every electronic you buy, certainly every television in the United States, if you look closely at the box, basically says it's illegal in California, right? Doesn't pass their look, everything is like, whatever emissions are coming out of this thing, whatever electromagnetic, whatever, doesn't pass California's laws. So California is sort of the most heavily regulated state in the country. And as best as I read this, it sounds like basically Play On using GoFan for ticketing wasn't having people opt into sharing their cookies like you see on every website on the internet. And then they hit them with the fine over that and the settlement. So like real thing. Not to minimize it, but I think it's just maybe the first or one of many sort of times we'll see this conversation come up. We talk about it in terms of streaming. We saw it come up with Live Barn in Canada because cameras were running. This thing is so fragmented, and I've done a deep dive into all the terms and conditions of kind of all the tech and streaming platforms, and they all have a slightly different take on who owns the IP first and foremost, and then also what you are just sort of implicitly agreeing to when you get onto a platform, right? And I think a lot of parents, certainly millennial parents, won't be surprised to learn that the terms and conditions of pretty much every tech platform in youth sports are very not totally different from social media platforms, where when you hit accept and you get on, you're signing like some like implicit thing about sharing data, and likeness, and sometimes even the IP of your children's games away. So listen, if you want to have technology, if you want to have streaming, if you want to have targeting and ads, like these things are table stakes, right? And I think in modern society, our online privacy should be valued, but it's also unlocked so many conveniences. So I'm not one of these people who's out there saying like, oh, you're wrong if you're tracking people with cookies, right? I'm a digital marketer. Like I get why you do it. 99.9% of the time, it's all anonymized data, right? Like no one's opening a folder and seeing where Kyle Pagan, browsed today. It's just getting fed into an algorithm to decide what ad to show you. So I think it's often a boogeyman. That said, I wrote today, when it comes in between registration and participation, I think where the conversation will go is opt in versus opt out, right? Lots of tech platforms, you can't even buy a new iPhone without, you have to agree to their very specific terms. I think it will be different when parents say, hey, my kid's going to play on this field, but I am not, just by signing up, I don't want to opt into this tech thing or this streaming thing. I want to have the ability to like raise my hand and say, yes, I want to be a part, versus the onus being on me to have to go find the opt out button, right? That's just my view on where I think the conversation will go. Parents will want to have the ability to raise their hand and willingly be involved versus having to like, oh shoot, I got to go like jump through 3 hurdles to get out of this thing just so my kid could play. That's where I think the crux of the issue came up here. And I'm sure it will happen again. And I don't think it's the fault of any particular operator. It's just the way of the world. But it's something I think everyone in the industry should at least be mindful of and thinking about what happens when such and such parent's kid was on a stream somewhere and they weren't aware of the terms of service because some other dad, right? Some of these are the dad puts it up or the mom puts it up. And by virtue of them using the platform, they are agreeing they've gotten the consent of everybody who's in the video. Well, like, is anyone going around with the clipboard when they stick their phone up there to record a soccer game? The answer is obviously no. And then, well, if a parent gets mad, they're going to, the platform is going to say, well, it's here in the T's and C's. So again, like everyone's doing their best. It's a new fragmented world. It's a new thing. I just think it's one of those things the industry is going to grapple with and figure out what the kind of like the default is. And the default is very wide ranging right now, as best as I could tell.
That's why we got lawyers, baby. Get your youth sports camera operating lawyers on retainer. I mean, you
Good
bring
time
up a great
to plug
point.
Buying Sandlot Summit sponsor Morgan Lewis. Actually, I think they're on the M&A side, but I'm sure they have a lawyer for that too.
You just bring up a great point because it's like what stops someone from bringing a lawsuit against one of the CaaS companies because they're technically making money off of a kid's name, image, and likeness? It's like it feels like such a case by case basis with people.
It is. I mean, and every one of them is just slightly different. And again, like I think we've talked about it. The positives of making money and sponsorship. TeamSnap, as an example, has been public in the past about how much money they've passed back through sponsorship through the tech platforms, right? So like there's a balance there. Like it's not always bad. A lot of times it's good. Like sponsorship can, as we've talked about, drive money back to the clubs, but also maybe reduce participation costs in the right scenario. So it's not always the boogeyman people make it out to be. But that said, like some parents will make it the boogeyman and find a technicality that someone screwed up on and make it a thing. So it's, just again, one of those things that everyone just has to think about and what's the right approach.
And then one of our 2026 predictions, and this might pour some cold water on it, but we were talking about expansion into Europe, potentially for one of these big companies, one of these streamers or one of these operating platforms. You think data privacy laws in the US are tough? Go over to Europe and see how tough they are.
Do you imagine opening your kid's live stream in England, right? It's just going to be like pop up. Do you agree? Do you agree? Hard sign. We need a wet signature. There's someone standing over there. They'll put a big red wax seal on it, and then you'll mail it in. And 3 weeks later, you'll be able to stream your kid's game.
Yeah, they'll send an owl. They'll attach it to an owl's leg, and you'll have to go to the Buckingham Palace or something like that. Yeah,
you can watch your kid's game next March.
Yeah,
once we process this.
Yeah.
I mean that's a real concern. That's a real concern.
All right, let's get over to Brian Litvack, CEO of LeagueApps. They've got 3 different solutions that they're tacking onto their app. 2 that you might know about. 1 that he's going to reveal. How do you like that, Kyle?
I like it. And I like that he touched on, I think, some broad trends. We've talked about tech platforms. We talked about this a little bit with GameChanger, addressing sort of before the event, during the event, and after the event, and then the difference for sort of addressing the parent/consumer need versus the operator/the customer need. And LeagueApps very much leans heavily into kind of the customer and operator side. And he gave some really interesting thoughts as to why, like, hey, we're going to continue innovating there and let those things fall down to the parents, and made a pretty compelling case for some of the features they're building to make operators' lives easier. Which maybe ran counter to a little bit what we talked about with sort of like leading with parent first tech. So really good interview, touched on lots of our trends here. And, again, one of the best guys in the space to talk to about this stuff.
Brian Litvack, CEO of LeagueApps. Thanks for coming on Buying Sandlot. How's it going today?
I'm good. Nice to see you guys again, Kyle and Kyle, and look forward to a chat here.
You are our third 2-time guest, by the way. It's a big honor.
I'm honored. One disclaimer, I got 2 comments recently. One thought this was wallpaper in my background, and the other thought it was my basement. But this is, in fact, my office, the office of, the CEO at LeagueApps. This is what we got in here.
Kyle, correct me if I'm wrong. I'm trying to rack my brain, but that has to be top 2, maybe number 1 background we've had as a guest.
Well, that's why you invited me back, right?
Very strong and on, like you guys are relentlessly on brand. Now, is this home office or office?
This is it. This is LeagueApps headquarters. There's everyone working.
Oh, wow.
Look, it's a tour. We got a tour.
That's awesome.
I'm giving the disclaimer, and you still don't believe me that this is our actual office.
I'm going to send this to Rob from Perfect Game, and he's going to need to up his game because he did it in his dining room, I think. He was a great interview, but some folks do need to up their backdrop game.
Rob lives in the town next to me, so we often go to the coffee shop together.
You got to get in his ear then.
Whenever you have the awards as the coolest real life background in your corporate office, I hope I'm a nominee.
There you go.
We're adding that. When we do our awards, we're going to do it big, and we're adding that.
Yeah,
good to know.
100%. So, hey, listen, Brian, thanks for coming on, man. We appreciate you squeezing us in because I know you're releasing a feature. It feels like every single week. First, it was TeamBuilder. The other day, you announced evaluations because it was featured at Sloan. I know you want to talk about another feature you'll have on the show today, but before we get into that, can you just expand on TeamBuilder and expand on evaluations and how you guys kind of have a plan for them to help league operators and beyond?
Yeah, before I get into it, I'll share what I share with my team office. It's not the features, it's really the value or the solutions that we can provide to our partners, right? And we take a lot of pride that LeagueApps will be valuable if we build solutions that help youth sports operators and organizations run, manage, and scale their operations and their programming in their communities, as they're the ones that are really actually making sports happen. And internally and more and more, what we like to share is the reason we exist, or the solutions we provide, is to help these organizations fortify their foundation. They are running on thin margins with not many assets, and making sure that they're in the best position to grow in a stable way their organization and run their business. We want to help them optimize. That's often what software is good for. How do we streamline workflows? How do we allow you to do what you do more effectively or more concisely? A lot of times for an operator, that's so that they can be doing what they love, so they can return to their passion and get back on the field. We want to enable scaling growth. We've seen that in our platform, where many forward thinkers or entrepreneurs or even community leaders have been able to build larger platforms by operating well, utilizing software, technology, partnerships in the right way. And ultimately, and this isn't what we touch as much, but we do want to elevate the experience of youth sports that parents and families, and most importantly, the kids experience. So with that, we're often lumped in as the registration platforms, and I'm just kind of used to that by now, and it's fine. But we believe we are much more than that for the organization and for the families as well. And, even within, you guys started this at features. Yes, we have registration and payments, and we have program management, and we have scheduling, we have reporting, which we call analytics, and websites and mobile apps. But what we focused on over the last 3 or 4 months of really the second half of last year, and just releasing these features now, is a lot of the workflows and processes that a sports operator needs to do after registration, right? And since those aren't always as monetizable as the registration, and I think that's often why people talk about it as the registration platforms, they can be overlooked, but they are so important to a successful sports organization and an operations. And we looked at the ones that we have a lot of that, but we looked at either things that we wanted to enhance or that we didn't actually have yet. And I like to say all the time, I've learned that I'm actually not helping to make sports happen. I'm a vertical SaaS payments enabled fintech software platform with high retention. So what I like about learning,
I like you adding the high retention. Very slick. Nice.
That's what the private equity and investor community likes as well, right? But what I like to really like take the lessons is what makes vertical SaaS companies great is they deeply understand their customers, or their, we call them partners, and the workflows and the things that you need. And that's why someone's going to, in that spaces, or sports operator in our case, is going to want to use our platform. So we looked at some of the more complex, they are not usually features that if you weren't operating sports you would even know or care about, and said, how do we be great at this? So going back to it, one of the places that we've invested is building evaluations, and these kind of come in the form of player reports. They're also going to tie into tryouts, but thematically, what I'm really proud of, and this is what I was sharing on LinkedIn, is that we have a deep belief that youth sports is as much about social emotional learning, the life lessons and skills that you build, as anything else. And one of the ways that happens is, by going to practice every week, or by how you improve throughout the season. And it's been difficult for a sports operator to really put structure around this. And part of the reason is coaches already are pressed for time and are passionate about being on the field. And unlike a teacher in a more formal education setting, it's not part of their workflows to evaluate all their players. So we wanted to enable that behavior. We wanted to say, if a coach sees a player growing throughout the season, rather than keeping it in their head, or complimenting the player, or maybe an offhand comment to a parent, how could we put some structure around this, right? And we think it's valuable for the kid and the family. They could see that growth. They could get feedback. We think it's valuable for the organization. They can say, hey, when you play in our 8-month club, or throughout the season, you're going to see and get development, and this is going to be structured, and this is how we're going to do it. Now, one of the problems is, how do you make this efficient for the coach? That's often what we heard from the operators. This is not something that they're dying to do after coaching a team, and in between, sometimes they have multiple jobs, is to go home and write evaluations. So we want to make this as simple as possible. We've done that by that this can be used on a desktop or a mobile device. That we have things that make it easy, like ratings, as well as qualitative feedback. But we're in the process of building now, which is really how this feature got energy and prioritized, was to make it voice assisted and to enable AI to play a big part of that. So a coach can actually just talk into their phone, the drive home from the game, leave a bunch of comments about players that we'll be able to parse that out and leave the feedback for those actual players within the platform. And that's something we're still building, but that's going to be a big component of this. And I think that gets to making it easier than ever before to allow a coach to simply add this into a workflow with the convenience of some new technology. And going back to the SaaS example I said before, I think what is really fun for us is we get to take all this cool technology that's coming into the world, AI being, what everyone is talking about right now, and apply it to our market with the insight that we have. And that's what we're trying to do with evaluations here. We want the evaluations to move with the kids season to season. We want them to be portable. We want them to be accessible. So there's a bunch more that we'll continue to develop with the tool.
How does that, you guys, I think you would maybe preview that a little bit in the fall. Does that tie into the new TeamBuilder feature as well?
Yeah, so all these things tie together and they're post-registration workflows, right? TeamBuilder was a little bit more, and I'll give the quick response and then a little bit more inside baseball as the life of a sports operator. But TeamBuilder was this idea that if you're any type of group, whether it's a rec league or right now we have our TeamBuilder for leagues, that instead of having to move players around or bring them into spreadsheets and then make teams and then put them back into the system, that we can make it really easy to move players around. So think of you're sitting around and you're looking and you want to see all the rankings from the tryout or from the evaluation period, or you're doing a draft and you want to move players onto a team, that this will allow the admin to do that instantaneously. Almost think like a fantasy draft. They're moving players onto teams and they're doing this workflow in minutes instead of, hours. We also, there's a important, crucial workflow for clubs in which there's often a tryout or evaluation period. Then they invite players onto a team or club, and then they want to kick off the registration, sometimes the invoice and payment to lock their spot in. And this happens often at the beginning of the season and is a big business process because they have a condensed amount of time to get everyone onto the right teams, the yellow and the red and the gold, silver, right? Whether they got a spot or not. And then if kids don't accept the spot, that they have to go to the next spot. And you want to kick all those processes off together so that you're placing a player on the team, they're getting notified, they have to fill out their compliance or payment or information so that they can lock their spot. So we've been working through that, and often that ties back to evaluations, right? And we're building out the workflows for tryouts now. So you evaluate the player during a tryout. You have all that information. In this case, you may not be sharing it with a player, but you're using it to create teams. You're seeing all that data. You're moving players onto teams. You're sending out invitations to parents. You're making sure that kicks off the workflows around registration, information, waivers, and payment. And if you can, that all is happening in a really condensed period of time. So we had a tool in the past that's actually still important called Invite to Join, which I always said was one of like the things that makes LeagueApps unique and special that nobody really knows about or cares about unless you have to invite players to join a team. So we've been building out more of this functionality or enhancing some of this functionality or going deeper into these workflows to really be a valuable solution for our partners and future partners and sports operators.
What an amazing use case, by the way. I mean, I just went through my son's rec baseball and a bunch of dads standing around with clipboards, and then it gets fed into a Excel sheet that is so big that it crashes half of the people's computers, and everybody sits around and does a draft, some of which remotely. I did on vacation last year, and I was thinking, man, like this feels like everyone's got a number assigned to them in 5 different areas of baseball. It feels like AI would be able to make these teams better than dads choosing favorites.
Yeah, you just nailed it. It's a part of that, overall, everyone's so passionate about what they do in youth sports that it gets done, right? But if it gets done with less errors and more efficiency, then you can focus on, getting on the field or coaching or the next issue or item, rather than these things that I think bog down a lot of sports operators and volunteers and parents, or quite frankly, sometimes make it so that parents don't want to volunteer. You mentioned AI, and that's what we've been saying for the last year, is that going back to what I said earlier, we have the opportunity to take all the advancements in AI and apply it to youth sports in a way where we can solve more of the problems and needs of sports operators, and then coaches, parents, and players. And more and more of that is becoming applicable, accessible, out there, and being used. And we're making large investments into how are we going to use AI for existing features and to build more value to the partners that we kind of are teammates with to make sports happen. And it's a lot of times you'll see an organization and they'll have a few full-time employees and then a plethora of 1099s that are admins and coaches and refs, and they're managing this whole thing. And you're thinking, wow, I have more empathy for the sports operator after understanding how much they're trying to juggle to make, the events happen on the weekend. And that's where we're excited to help use AI, tools and technology to be employee number 3, 4, and 5 of those organizations and solve things and create agents that allow them to do things like create teams or sort evaluations or understand, accounting or payments collections or customer service. And we're investing a lot in those areas. So hopefully these are some of the features and a lot more to come that are going to incorporate some of the things that everyone's using with AI in their day-to-day right now.
You sort of just touched on the timing of when these features and products are used. And I've heard some of your peers describe it as kind of before the game, during the game, and then after the game, right? So registration obviously before, but it sounds like you guys are leaning a little bit into those after the game things. And like from my view in the industry, a lot of that stuff has taken place in the form of like streaming and sharing clips. But you're like, hey, we have the coaches and organizers and operators here who have after the game things like evaluations. Like let's tackle that on their behalf.
Yeah, we take a lot of pride in that. Let's solve the problems for the operator and the organization, and then that will trickle into the coaches, parents, and players. So I think it's really before the season, during the season, and after the season, and then before the game, during the game, and after the game. We're like two different time continuums of when things are happening and workflows. I've said forever. If you said you're a concert promoter, you'd be like, oh, that's so, or a concert producer. Oh, that's a lot of work. Then you said you have to produce 17 concerts around town with no full-time people. You'd be like, oh, that's a crazy amount of work, right? That's what sports operators are doing, right? They have all these activities every day of the week, all across their communities. And the more that you're able to create efficiency and automate workflows and do some of the work before, during, and after the games and the seasons, it will lead to better sports experience. It will enhance the experience indirectly. It will lead more time to engagement and more time to, connecting with a passion that I think is why most people get involved in sports.
A two-parter for you. Did you give us that third feature that you wanted to? Yeah,
that's great, Kyle. Yeah. I appreciate that. So then the third thing we're coming out with actually this week is we've rebuilt our scheduling platform. And we're calling it Global Schedule. And really the value of this is we were very program specific, and then it rolled up in some places. But we want an operator to look at all of their field space, all of their availability, and then be able to schedule all of their events. And oftentimes that's across sometimes different sports, but different program types, from a practice for a club team to a game in a competitions platform to a tournament. And what we saw is that more and more of the operators are trying to figure out that puzzle of not just how do I schedule this season or this tournament, but what's all my field space, what's all my availability, how do I best use this field space and availability? Whether you're a facility owner, whether you have permits of parks around town, whether you're creating your own space, that puzzle of how to best utilize the space for the organization. And a lot of it has to do with just surfacing the right information in the right ways. And we've taken a lot of what are the views that an operator needs to. What do they want if they have to reschedule games because of a rainout? What's the most efficient way to do that? If they want to see coaching conflicts or availability, that's where we haven't launched that yet. So we're rolling this out to our entire base this week and in the next few weeks, of creating much more powerful and sophisticated scheduling platform. And again, we will incorporate more AI tools into that to synthesize that information, to help not just have an operator now be able to look at it like a Google Calendar and move things around, but really help them figure out, hey, what's the best way to schedule all these practices with the constraints that we have, right? We think a lot more of that is going to happen in more of a, LLM chat interface than clicking a bunch of buttons in a bunch of forums. So we're working towards that as well.
Feels like you sort of buried the lead here on that feature, by the way. It's just like, but can I use this for the summit panels I'm trying to put together? Because the scheduling and the constraints of schedule requests, I need this like yesterday.
And your evaluation tools, because we want to be able to put the 4s with the 5s and the 3s with the 4s.
I think a lot of times I tell my team, we're sticking to team sports. If someone wants to use LeagueApps or the other team sports, it's not going to work. So when Kyle's yelling at me that there's a Zamboni time slot in the middle of his conference, I'll say I told you so. But you know what? We're proud of our platform. We partner with thousands of organizations and millions of people, but with all the new technology and all the new platforms and entrants in the market, we want to continue to be more valuable, right? And what's exciting about AI is I used to, even more recently, get on stage and say, man, I've been trying to figure out double elimination tournament brackets for the last decade. AI and the rate of development and the rate of innovation is, shame on me if there's something that I've been wanting to do for 10 years, because I feel like now we're going to have the bandwidth and the resources and development power and the integrations and the data flow to build all that stuff. And, there's a lot of parent demand for better tools. There's a lot of coach demand. There's a lot of operator demand. I'm excited to see that happen in the industry. And Kyle, I've enjoyed following what you guys are doing, because there's a lot of smart people working on this stuff right now, and it's going to be fun and cool to see solutions come to things. And the next generation parents won't understand that Kyle had the pencil and paper and had to grade everyone with a 5, because it would just be better. And I think that's the pace that we're on, and I think that's what will make overall the sports experience better. Fair teams, Kyle. More compliance.
Poor Kyle had the draft from the beach last year, so you know how it is. Last one for me, and we'll get you out of here. I know you're busy. We hear all the time from people around the space, like software technology is a team sport. I don't really know you, but from your LinkedIn post, you seem like a relatively good guy, and I feel like you would kind of agree with that and stuff, that software technology, especially in this space, is a team sport. Will this all be built in-house, or will you look at other companies you think maybe as a bolt-on option for features, solutions, coming down the line?
Yeah, I think that's twofold. One, we want to be a platform that integrates with many of the best solutions. I think we do that in different ways. We're working with platforms like Anchored around compliance, and Assigner and Arbiter around referee scheduling. And there's probably a few more I'm forgetting. And for the most part, if that provides the right solution, then that's great. We still use Team Genius for evaluations, and want to continue to figure out the way that if someone likes that platform, they can keep on working with LeagueApps. Some of that, we want to build better APIs and better integrations so that they're smooth and effective. And then very interested, and you guys do a great job of this, of what are the new things coming out in the market? What are the solutions that are providing a lot of value? We're using AI a lot to see when we make 10,000 phone calls a month and have over 1,000 conversations with sports operators. What are they talking about? What are they using? What are the tools? And I expect more tools to come out and more solutions to come out. Like many of us, I'm sitting on Lovable building apps that I've always wanted to, and trying to figure out if I could do this, then a lot of pumped up, operators and parents are going to be doing this too. So I'm excited to see how that all comes together. And yeah, Kyle, what I really believe, and what at your conference, and I think what you guys are at our conference, is everyone has a really common mission in youth sports, and they all got into it for a purposeful reason. And I think if everyone's trying to say, how can we make youth sports better, then good things will happen.
Cool. Well, you've been generous with your time. We really appreciate it. Hey, any more features, any more solutions come down the pike, you let us know, right? You know where to come.
Yeah, I'm pumped up for next month. Everybody's talking about the Buy and Sandlot event. So looking forward to, you guys have brought together a good group of people. I'm looking forward to that.
We will hashtag see you in Philly, as they are saying. as I've heard.
All right. That was the interview with Brian. Thank you for Brian coming on. Thank you to you, the listener. We will talk to you on Friday. Go get your Buying Sandlot tickets. Like Kyle said, if you haven't heard the sponsors and you haven't heard the speaker list and you're still undecided, I don't know what else more we can do. So we'll talk to you on Friday. BuyingSandlot.com for the tickets or the link in this description. Talk to you later.